Welcome to the podcast. We are back. Back to the Colonel and the Kid podcast. I'm your host, Greg Heitmann. And we did have a podcast last week, but it was a special edition. Trippin' with Catalina's travel podcast. That's where she sums up her recent adventures and her trip taken on vacation. So we'll have part 2 of that podcast coming up in the near future. But in the meantime, I'm back from my recent under the weather situation. I think I had the flu, but now I'm battling allergies. And today is a lot better, but yesterday was ridiculous. It was non-functional, even after taking 3 different types of allergy medication. I don't know how to follow directions, apparently. Anyway, but yeah, we're here at the podcast, and we're going to read a chapter today and keep moving on, working on that. Of course, this is the podcast to honor my grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Edwin P. Hagen Jr. And he was the colonel. I am the kid, Greg Heitmann. And the podcast is based on my memoir that I've written basically in honor of my grandpa. And it was the colonel, as many people called him. I just called him Grandpa. But that was my mom's dad, my maternal grandfather. And this is a special podcast I just developed basically to try to record the history of my grandfather in electronic audio and now in video. We have the video podcast going on too. And be forever out there, uploaded to the internet and preserved forever for all to I guess learn from. That's probably the main thing that I've come across in doing the podcast and after writing the memoir is trying to summarize the history, but also include what I consider to be the life lessons that a grandfather can impart to grandchildren, and especially me, the grandson, in this case, to hopefully not have to learn the hard way on things. But the longer I've been around, it seems like the more it seems obvious that people can't learn except through the hard way. They just have to experience it themselves. They can be told and read and see things and lessons that are out there, but you just can't learn the lesson without experiencing it, and more than likely experiencing the failure that will, I guess, burn that lesson into the memory of how to do whatever or how to not do something. Basically live life the best way possibly. I don't know if it's the best way you can. I mean, it's so subjective in how what the terminology for best might be, but I'm starting to drift again. Let's get back. Let's just get into the chapter if I can. This is episode 33, chapter 33 in the memoir, and this was called The Politics. Today's actually Monday, March 23rd. Time just flies by so fast. Just amazing to me. We're officially in spring now, and I'm hoping to keep going on this the podcast and based on the memoirs, but I'm still trying to finish up the rest of the memoir, and we're making positive progress. So I think we're going to be able to finish it up this year, which will be, I mean, I'll be very satisfied with that if we can do that. I mean, and I say finish up the memoir, that means the first 3 volumes. Each volume has 20 chapters, so it'll be 60 chapters in total. I don't know if I'll stop there. There might be a slow going addition to that, additional chapters. So like a volume 4, which probably be more focused on just about me in particular. Once the initial 60 chapters are done, and I'll wrap up that part of the memoir specifically about my grandfather, and then we'll turn probably to something else and keep going more focused on my life and stuff, I guess. Maybe a truer memoir of of Greg, if you want to call it that. But that's how, I guess that's what I'm anticipating and hoping for and striving for. So look forward to that in the future. But anyway, so the podcast is built on the spine of the memoir, the Colonel and the Kid memoir. But then I have branches out from there, and I have different topics, different little segments, recurring segments that I do, and we'll get in that today a little bit. Hopefully, have some chance to talk about some other peripheral things other than the actual memoir. But in the meantime, let's just go ahead and get the chapter read into the record. And this is episode 33, the politics, and then we can go on from there. And I know that some people out there probably just want to hear the chapter and get that into the record for them, and they may not care about the rest of the stuff and what's going on in the recurring segments. So we'll just go ahead and proceed. Oh, okay. Of course, it's not coming up. We'll find it here. Just hold on. Patience. Just one momento. Uno momento, por favor. There we go. I guess I closed it accidentally. Now I got it called back up. So, all right, the Colonel and the Kid. Chapter 33, the politics. And this one's I guess it's a medium-sized chapter. It's about 1,000 words, but there's several photographs, so it might take a little longer. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how much time I have for peripheral stuff, but we'll go ahead and get this chapter into the record and then go from there and see how much time we have. Maybe we'll go a little longer today. I think I got time to do that. Anyway, Colonel and the Kid, chapter 33, the politics. And as always, we like to start off with a quote, and this time the quote is from Jim Croce. Quote, "Don't tug on Superman's cape," end quote. And you may recognize that that's a lyric from a Jim Croce song. I think it's "Don't Mess Around with the Jim," and that's got that. I think it's kind of a famous quote. Don't tug on Superman's cape. Don't antagonize Superman because you won't like what you get in return. So anyway, let's get this chapter going. Politics wasn't a thing for Grandpa. I don't remember discussions of political philosophies, candidates, or anything related to the field of politics growing up. Grandpa was an American above everything else, a patriot first and foremost. I have concluded that Grandpa was the type of person that was not going to wade into the ugliness of political machinations, where relationships could be damaged with a few words that could be interpreted as insulting. I guess it was a topic that the adults just flat out avoided, because I never heard a debate, argument, or discussion about a president or any candidate for that matter. I'm sure people in general were just more well-mannered in the old days, more tolerant, patient, and less confrontational. Ah, the good old days. Grandpa was a Democrat. As I understood it, that's just the way it was when you got back from the war and you had a family to support. President Franklin D. Roosevelt had guided America through the darkest days of the century. This shaped Americans. It was patriotic to be a Democrat. Plus, if you wanted a job, you better be correctly affiliated to compete with other employment candidates. I'm sure the seeds of the Democrat Party were firmly sown with Grandpa at the time of the war. I would say this, though. Grandpa was about as independent of a thinker as I've ever known. He was about doing whatever's best for the community, state, and country. Grandpa was not beholden to any political dogma. It shouldn't be surprising that Grandpa was appointed by a Republican governor, Bill Janklow, to the Fort Sisseton Commission. Grandpa was the epitome of nonpartisan. He was perfect to support the mission of the fort, And a great popular governor, William J. Janklow, identified a perfect commissioner to assist in the effort to preserve the fort. Fort Sisseton, originally Fort Wadsworth, was a U.S. Army post established in the Dakota Territory. In 1864, the Army constructed a military post to assist in the settlement of the West. No longer needed in the late 1800s, the fort was decommissioned and in private hands for many years. It was a hunting lodge for much of the time in the early 1900s. In 1959, the fort was established as the South Dakota State Park. Many of the buildings were in disrepair. It took many years to rehabilitate and preserve the fort. It is now a gem in the Glacial Lakes area. Hey, and we have our first photo of the chapter. And I'll read the caption, then describe. And the caption reads, I don't remember his name, but my new native friend took time to pose for a picture with me in 2012 in front of my sales booth at the Fort Sisseton Festival. And the photo, I'll describe it here. This is it's me and a Native American gentleman. And like I said, I'm sure he introduced himself and told me his name, but he was he came by. He was just strolling past my booth, and he saw me in my little uniform. I'm wearing a period piece uniform for a cavalry soldier, and I have a cavalry sword in my hand, and got the cavalry hat and everything going on here to be a cavalry soldier in the 1860s. And he's dressed in the full native garb with tassels or buckskin fringe and buckskin vest and little headdress. And we're at Fort Sisseton State Park. And why I was there to sell my book, Fort Sisseton, Dakota Territory. It's a Western historical fiction book, and we'll talk more about that coming up here a little bit. But the picture is me. I'm just in front of my little canopy that I have set up, and we just have a little card table and chairs where I can autograph some books and sell them. I think I was selling books like $5 a book back then. I don't know. It's pretty good. Pretty good time. I think Caitlin actually helped me that first time I ever did it way back then in 2012. I mean, that's 14 years ago now. It's just unbelievable to me how time has just flown by. It's a pretty cool picture. It'd be more interesting probably if we'd have got in front of the brick buildings of the fort instead of in front of my modern canopy that's strapped down with ratchet tarp strap type stuff. And I would like to note in this picture that behind me, you can see it's one of the old berms for the fort, the walls, if you will, where I think in general, even myself, that when I think of like an army fort from the 1860s, you think of like the posts that they have these giant logs, maybe with spiky points on them, where they'd be enclosed and they'd be to protect you from the wilderness, and then maybe the Indians, the wild Indians that are out there that might be attacking the fort or whatever. But this fort was set up. It didn't have a big wall around it other than these berms that they dug in and just built up the soil to try to, I guess, slow down anybody that might be trying to come to attack them. And part of the other defenses were just the lake that was basically around one side, maybe around two sides. I think there was water, just bodies of water that protected the soldiers out on the prairie at that time. But anyway, I just note that in the picture that that's that berm was the wall of the fort, so to speak. Anyway, back to the text of the chapter. Fort Sisseton State Park was very special to Grandpa. He donated many items to the fort, including his prized taxidermy trophies and many treasured items from his den when they downsized the house. I should have spoken up. I wish I could have had the privilege to display the mounts, especially old Sam. Just one more example of failing to communicate with Grandpa on my part. And we have another photo of me. I'll read the caption here and then describe. Caption reads, "Me in my 1860s cavalry uniform and sword posing in front of my sales booth at the 2019 Fort Sisseton Festival. I think I finally made enough money in book sales that year to pay for my fancy hat." So, tip of the cap to noting my other fancy hat that I have. So this was a picture. It's pretty much the same as the previous one, except at a different spot where the booth was. I'm backed up to one of the old Fort Sisseton buildings. You can see that brick building background, and then some other booths, sales booths from that year. And one of the things I remember from that year, 2019, I went back and that was the year I went back to the festival. Later, I think later in the week, uh, Caitlin, my niece, was getting married, so I was back in South Dakota for the festival and for her wedding. In the back of this photograph, I mean, you can see some of the other booths there, and someone's got all these framed prints of different things, patriotic themes, cowboy themes, and stuff. Way in the back, you can see the South Dakota Public TV booth. And one of the things I remember, there was a like a hen mallard had some ducklings, and they somehow got intermixed with all the stuff that was going on. And I went over there and helped them grab a couple of ducklings, and they got the mama duck, and we got it over taken care of. Got them out of the way of all the visitors and all the booth traffic and everything else. That was pretty memorable. It was a nice day. I don't know. I don't know how many books I sold. I probably sold, I don't know, 50, 60 books. Maybe up to 100. I don't even know. During those times up there. It's pretty fun. It's just pretty interesting to be out seeing all the people go by, and it's especially when the weather's nice. I know that it could be variable weather conditions up there, and even in early June. Anyway, back to the chapter. My first book, Fort Sisseton, Dakota Territory, is dedicated to Lieutenant Colonel Edwin P. Hagen Jr., an officer and a gentleman. It is a small token of my appreciation to the man that was my grandfather. And then we finally have a picture of the book itself. This is the picture of the front cover of the paperback Fort Sisseton, Dakota Territory by Gregory L. Heitmann. And I put a little ribbon thing on this particular publication that says Special 5th Anniversary Edition. And I think now, I don't know what the copyright, I don't have that book handy, but I think I'm going to guess. I think that book was published in 2009, so that'd be like 17 years ago now. And I still have that special 5th edition anniversary cover. So if you order it from Amazon, a paperback copy, it still says the 5th anniversary edition 12 years ago. So I should update that little emblem and maybe the cover itself. I like the cover. The cover of the book, it's got it's actually one of the, I think the first year I was up there for the festival, I went over and had my old Canon camera, and I took some pictures of the display, the demonstration of the cavalry reenactors on the parade grounds of the fort, and I use some Photoshop stuff to put that cover together. Maybe it's a little, there's a little filter, so it's more of a modern, I don't know, I won't say pointillist type. I won't say pixelated, but it's not like a true sharp photograph. It's more artistically rendered photograph of the cavalry 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 members riding a horse, and they're holding up the United States flag, a period flag of that time. I don't know how many stars were on that during the 1860s, let's say 25, maybe 30. Figure that out. There's a question for you in the notes for you listeners. Maybe you can reply and respond to my podcast or video podcast. It's going to be available on YouTube, and I'll post these pictures on the video podcast. And then somebody can tell me how many stars there should have been on that flag for the during the 1860s. I mean, just prior to the Civil War. That's the era of that book, Fort Sisseton, Dakota Territory. Again, historical fiction book about the area and some of the goings ons of that time. But I don't know, it's pretty good. Still like it. Back to the chapter. Fort Sisseton, Dakota Territory is a historical fiction account of the fort and actual events set in the late 1860s. It was a big step in my writing career. I've published 8 other books since that time. Twice I've participated in the Fort Sisseton Historical Festival, renting a booth and selling books to the attendees. What a great time. Both times I participated, the weather was perfect. Sometimes you can get rain or even winter-like conditions. It was a bluebird day on both occasions. I look forward to my next chance as a participant in the event. And I'll put a little parenthetical comment on that paragraph that I did go up for a third time, and I had Angela come up with me, and that was in 2024. Yeah, pretty sure it was June 2024, and she came up. She's from Santa Fe, and I was living in Fort Pierre at the time, working my final year with my job up there, and applied for a sales booth, and she drove up, and we drove up to stayed in Britain at one of the hotels there in Britain, and traveled up to Fort Sisseton State Park for the 2-day festival. And we had a really good day the first day, and the second day the weather kind of deteriorated, and we only had the booth open for maybe 2 hours or so, and the weather got really windy and kind of rainy and cold, so we shut down early that day on Sunday. And I think if I go back, I think maybe I'll just have the booth out one day on that Saturday, and that would be the best thing to do. And now that I'm retired, I have more time to do that, so maybe I'll do that. Not this year, but maybe the next year, 2027. So look forward to that, or potentially look forward to that. I'm not saying I'm not committing completely, but I think in in January, I think comes out where you can apply. Costs like $35, $40. Maybe it's more than that now. Between $30 and $50 to rent a booth space up there. And it's worth it. It's just a good time, I think. And here we have another picture. And I'll read the caption and describe. The caption reads, a photo I took of the cavalry demonstration on the parade grounds at the 2012 Fort Sisseton Historical Festival. And this is on the parade grounds, and you can see basically the roof of one of the big buildings, the historic buildings of the fort. And in the background and in the foreground, you can see cavalry members there. They're all dressed in the period uniforms, and they want the flag bearer has the flag. I think it's a period flag of the time of the 1860s, and it's kind of maybe I'll call it a battle flag, because it's like got the triangle cut out of the star, not the stars, but the stripe part of it. So it's got like 2 tails of the red and white stripes on there. And the cavalry soldiers at this point, they're all dressed in similar to the photograph that uniform. It's a dark blue shirt and the light baby blue trousers, and they have the cavalry hat, which is basically the flat brim navy blue hat with a gold braid and insignia of the cavalry, crossed swords on the front of the hat. It's like a flat brimmed cowboy hat. That was the uniform of the day. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like 7 soldiers in the photo that you can see, at least there, on their horses and getting ready to charge across the parade grounds. And then below that photo, I have another photo of the same demonstration here. I'll read the caption and describe. Another view of the cavalry demonstration on the parade grounds at the 2012 Fort Sisseton Historical Festival. This is the southern view of a north-facing mounted cavalry unit. What is it? It's the horses behinds. They're the rear end of horses riding away from me as I take the photograph, and in the background you can see the big building. And I think that's the main headquarters for the state park there. It's got a museum in it. Lots of cool stuff, artifacts and everything. And again, to give you the time frame, that this is the early 1860s, when this fort was most active, and this is just prior to the start of the Civil War. So there's a lot of you know, a lot of old things in that time period and era that have been saved and preserved, and I think donated by the citizens around that area and given back to I guess just the people of the state for display and educational purposes. And it's really interesting. You can kind of catch a glimpse of some of the building there that's field stone and concrete as far as making the walls of that. And I'm guessing those aren't period shingles. Those are modern shingles. But the building is huge. It's surprising how big it is. And that must have been quite the effort to get that built out there in the middle of the prairie, given that there wasn't a glut of trees. There was trees around the lakes in the prairie, the glacial lakes region, the prairie Decotu of that area. But pretty good architectural feat, I think, to get the building constructed. And here's another photo. I'll read the caption, then describe. Caption reads, "A view of the infantry demonstration on the parade grounds at the 2012 Fort Sisseton Historical Festival." In this picture, you can see like the infantry soldiers. So these are just the ground troops, so to speak, if you will. So it's the infantry versus the cavalry, which is the mounted horse troops. And these guys got their long muskets that they're holding. They're in sort of a formation, and they have the front row. There's probably about, I would say, let's call it a dozen soldiers in this little formation. And the front row, the front line, is kneeling, getting ready to shoulder their rifles and aim at an enemy. This is just a demonstration of how they would march across the parade ground and then deploy for engagement with enemy troops. And so then you have the rear 6 soldiers, let's say, that are standing, and they're going to provide the top layer of fire, I guess. So these are like the muskets, probably just single muzzle loading rifles at that time frame. So there'd be a lot of alternating firing and reloading to try to defend or attack the enemy. And then on the very right side of the photo, there's the drummer that's marching, that he's paused and kind of in ready position to start drumming the cadence for marching again. But here you can get a better view of the building in the background and the fieldstone walls and concrete that were part of the construction of the barracks and office buildings and whatever else, horse barns of the period of the fort at that time. Pretty good picture. And then below that, here's another picture, and I'll read the caption, then talk just a little bit. The caption reads, "A member of the infantry demonstration team looks on as the cavalry demonstration is performed on the parade grounds at the 2012 Fort Sisseton Historical Festival." So I took this picture, and kind of in the very close foreground is like the period infantry soldier standing at parade rest, I guess, with his rifle in front of the cavalry troops out on the parade grounds. And on the left side of the photo, it's kind of like the soldier is mostly in silhouette, and on the left and on the right side of the photo, it's just like a big cottonwood tree trunk kind of framing the photo of the horses and soldiers out on the field. And I just really from an artistic standpoint, this photo is pretty decent photo I took myself, if I must say so myself. So enjoy that, looking at that photo and seeing that again here. There's a lot of big, I should maybe mention, there's a lot of big cottonwood trees that are surrounding the buildings and in the Fort Sisseton State Park. So it's really nice and green, and just really, what they call it, Chamber of Commerce weather for the tourists to come out and see all the demonstrations and see all the historic stuff. And it's amazing how many people come out there, and they have camping sites so you can camp out there. And there's a lot of people that spend that Fort Sisseton Historical Festival. It starts on a Friday evening, goes all day Saturday, and it goes through the end of Sunday. So it's pretty neat event. And if you ever get a chance here in South Dakota during the first weekend of June, that's when it's held. Stop by and see it. Or if you're just in South Dakota, you want to go see something a little different, kind of out of the main, off the main highway type, kind of just an educational site, the Fort Sisseton State Park up there. It's really beautiful, beautiful area. And just highly recommend it if you ever get the chance, if you're in the area, want to see something different and peaceful. I mean, the during the festival, it's very busy, but I think during the rest of the year, off season, you'd probably be surprised to see another 2 or 3 parties at the same time. You are out there going through the museum and stuff. So highly recommend it. But anyway, back to the chapter. I return full circle to the politics that I started out with in this chapter. Title and my quote: "Don't tug on Superman's cape." It runs in the family. I couldn't resist returning some of the teasing Grandpa laid on his kids in the old days. There I was, tugging on Superman's cape. What some might call a warped sense of humor, I came up with a plan to play a joke on Grandpa. In 2001, I gave Grandpa and Grandma Christmas gifts of cartoonish bobbleheads. Grandma got a Bill Clinton, and Grandpa got designated a George W. Bush, former presidential bobbleheads. Grandpa, ever the gentleman, graciously accepted the gift without a disparaging comment. And I have a photo of that bobblehead. And I'll read the caption and describe. Photo of the bobblehead of President George W. Bush that was returned to me. I'm not sure what happened to President Bill Clinton bobblehead. I'll have to ask around. And it's just a photo of it's probably like a 6-inch tall bobblehead, and it's a kind of a cartoonish likeness of George W. Bush. He's got his hand up doing this, and I'll put this photo into the video podcast. And I dropped a ball, of course, like typical. There's always something in the podcast that seemed like I forget to do or grab or something. I actually have this bobblehead in the back room. I should have brought it in. It's still in the box. I could have held it up and displayed it here in person, but sorry about that. So those just listening to the audio don't care anyway. But if you're watching the video podcast, I'll put this photo up, and maybe in a future podcast I'll have it in. Maybe I'll display that behind me, the shelf in the future. But it's really cool. I don't know whatever happened to the Bill Clinton one. I wonder if Kathy's got it. Maybe she has that down in her stuff. Maybe I can ask my mom, and my mom quiz Kathy and see if she's got it. So anyway, I'm going to finish up the chapter here. Colonel was a much bigger man than me. I'm pretty sure nobody would argue that point. Kind of an example of the American spirit. If only I was more like him. I miss you, Grandpa. What a first conversation on politics we could enjoy in today's strange times. And that's the end of the chapter, and we'll finish it off here with the quote. Quote, "Everything is changing. People are taking their comedians seriously and the politicians as a joke." End quote. And that was a famous quote from Will Rogers. Comedian, actor, activist, whatever you want to call him, Will Rogers. He was from Oklahoma, and I think he died pretty young in a plane crash up in Alaska, if I'm not mistaken, back in the 40s or 50s, something like that. Anyway, he's pretty popular in his time for writing and performing and touring and stuff like that. So anyway, that was the chapter 33, The Politics from the Colonel and the Kid memoir. And I will say that one of the things that's you'll you'll see in the future or hear in the future podcast too is that I have an actual chapter called The Fort, which is more detailed about Fort Sisseton. I guess really there's a lot. I think I found a whole bunch of photographs that Grandpa had of the it was prior to his work being on the Fort Sisseton Commission, but I can't remember what it was, like the 75th anniversary of the fort or something like that. It was a big celebration where they celebrated the fort, and I found a whole bunch of slides and turned those into photos and have more conversation and more documentation on Fort Sisseton. But this chapter was mostly I wanted, like you heard on the title, it was the politics and how I guess for me and my observations that Grandpa transcended the politics. He wasn't a politician by any means. Maybe he had a lot more um, discussions and more philosophies with his friends and you know his bowling league or golf league, stuff like that. But I guess as far as the family goes, I never saw it, never heard it. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, as a kid that much anyway. But I don't know. I think for me, I just think of that as Grandpa, as the model of how politics should be handled, I guess, in the public. And I think I just can't imagine what Grandpa would be thinking about today's politics and what's going on with all this, what I consider just craziness, just the way that culture, you know, has seemingly breaking down as we speak, and the politics are trying to maybe regroup it back together to make it more, I guess, sane. I mean, I think talk about things about, um, I guess, the recent State of the Union when President Trump basically said, "These people are crazy," and just pointed out to a bunch of people that were there in his address to Congress about the State of the Union. And it's just, I guess, to me, driving the point home where there's this craziness is pervasive throughout the country and in politics. But I don't know, maybe we'll pull it back from the brink. We'll see what happens. And I always like to pull out the quote. I don't even know it's true. I should probably do some more research on this before I use it. I'll use it anyway, and then maybe we can get back to it, maybe in a future segment of verbal abuse. But it's like a Chinese proverb. They say, um, they say it is from the Chinese, but the proverb supposedly is, "May you live in interesting times." And I don't know. This is by far the most interesting time that I could think of in my life is right now. It's just how weird it is. And for me, it's weird in a great way because I'm retired now. I don't really have to. Do I have to worry about it? No, I probably don't have to worry about much at all. Just enjoy my life. So it was a good chapter. Glad I have that chapter in there. It's probably a good midpoint. Just after the midpoint, we're halfway through the I guess 60 chapters that I've outlined for myself that I want to get through. We're at chapter 33 today, so 27 left to wrap things up in the memoir. And I guess maybe one other thing or a couple other things to comment on the memoir in general. I think I talked about the plans for the future. But one of the things that I need to add on and then we'll probably go over as the podcasts continue is I want to identify, I guess, maybe the life lesson associated with the chapter and talk about that a little more and make that a little, just make, more obvious and actually documented in the chapter itself at the end about, I guess, Grandpa's wise words, or what I would think are the wise words he'd want to share about, you know, the life lesson for each chapter. I don't think I don't think that was really in my mind when I was doing the memoir, when I was developing it itself. And I think that'd be an excellent addition to the chapters when they're all completed, and then go through all the chapters again. Maybe not read them all again, but just go through the summary of what the life lesson might be, along with the summary of the chapter. So I can see that's what I see developing in the future as far as the ongoing podcast. I mean, once all the chapters are read into the record, I think I'll have a way of continuing discussing the chapters with the life lessons and just sharing those for people. And I don't, the way I've seen it, this, you can give all the teaching you want and all the shortcuts, the life hacks for people. But I think the only way, seems like the only way people learn, and I don't exclude myself from this idea that the only way people learn is just from experience and learning the hard way themselves, that's the way it should be done. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you don't want to learn the hard way that, on somehow kill yourself doing something you should have known better not to do. But there's a lot of things that you can, that you just learn how to do, and maybe you don't learn until it's the hard way, like riding a bike. There's no way you can read all the books you want about learning how to ride a bike when you're a kid, but you're probably going to learn the hard way of how to ride the bike. And the hard way is going to be falling off the bike and say, "Oh, I should have been pedaling faster," or whatever it is, or I shouldn't have run into the curb, or maybe I should have avoided hitting the tree. I don't know. That's the most simplest one that comes to mind. There's a lot of other lessons too that go there. And I think of that. I think of like my younger brother Garrett learning how to ride a bike when he didn't know how to stop his bike. He would just like jump off and let the bike just go by itself when he was a kid. I think that was when we lived in Billings, Montana is when he learned to ride a bike. And it was like this heavy, super heavy duty little kid's bike. And I remember him getting the training wheels off and then trying to learn how to ride the bike and never be able to stop and just like sit on the bike and remain upright. He would just bail off the bike and let it go and run alongside and let the bike just take off and roll to a crashing stop by itself. So there you go, Garrett. If you're listening to that, um, I hope you enjoyed that memory. And if that memory is incorrect, you'll have to tell me and I can correct it for the record, because I do have a recurring segment in the after podcast. I don't know if it's the after podcast of the chapter, just the podcast, a recurring segment where I call corrections of stuff that I've maybe misstated or mistakenly said, or who knows. My my dyslexia, which is not a thing. I don't have dyslexia. But I don't know if I believe in dyslexia, to tell you the truth. For other people, there's just that they just don't know how to read well, which is it's something that, again, life lessons and learning things the hard way. One of the life lessons is that you have to practice a lot to get good at anything. I mean, you can be good right away at doing something, but if you practice more, then you can become even better. But you're not going to become great. I don't think you'd be great at anything immediately. You have to practice so much to start to be even good. And the more you practice, then you get to great. And then you can get to be an expert. Then you can get to be the best, excellent, excellence. And then you can be the top in the world. But to be the top in the world at anything, you're going to have to practice. That's it. So coming back full circle on that, if you're quote unquote dyslexic and you don't read very well, just practice reading. Pretty soon, you'll be able to read better. Those words and letters won't be all jumbled up. You can just read it, and you learn how to do that with practice. So there you go. Oh, there's today's life lesson. All right, let's get back to the rest of the podcast. And so, of course, we're going to have our first sponsor for the day. The sponsor is me. There it is. Big Cooley. There's the poster in the background. Big for those watching again, for those in the audio, too bad you missed out. I'm holding up the book, Big Cooley. And I hold this up as the first advertiser for the day. Get your Charlie LeBeau Mystery Series book, Big Cooley, through Amazon.com. And there's a big announcement. I am working on the next book in the series of the Charlie LeBeau Mysteries. It'll be book number 6. There's 7 total coming. And this is book number 6. I'm editing it myself. I'm going to send those edited chapters to my official editor, Gwyneth, in the near future. And then she will be putting those, well, she'll be reading them and putting the finishing touches on those so I can finally get that compiled and completed. And then we'll have another book number 6 in the series. Lake Traverse, it's called. So that's big news. I got the first 2 chapters done. I'll get those sent over to her coming up here pretty quickly. And hopefully have another book out this summer for those of you that have been waiting patiently for that to happen. Hopefully we'll have it out in 2026. I am not just sitting around doing nothing in my retirement. I'm actually going to have something completed, hopefully. So that's the big news that I wanted to share today, and which leads us to the second sponsor for today's podcast, and that is, for those of you watching, O'Farrell Hat Company. I'm wearing the O'Farrell hat that they gave me, that I won from my Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation raffle from 2017, 9 years ago. Wearing the hat again, and I got the hat box cover over there put up. And I am going to note that I do have the Vikings LED lighted sign that Stefan gave me for Christmas. Got that going, and I was just kind of curious. We're like 48 minutes into the podcast, and I haven't. It's still powered on. I have it on the charger, little battery chargers I use for my cell phone as a spare battery charger in case I lose power if I'm out traveling or something like that. And I thought it usually shut off after a half hour, but apparently it's still going good. So trying to note the time of how long that will run on that charge. I mean, it seemed like it doesn't run out of battery. It's still charged up, but it seemed like it would shut off after a half hour for whatever reason, maybe just as a, not like a safety function, but just as a preservation function for the battery itself. So anyway, I find that interesting. This is sort of an experiment to see how long that will last. And I'll note that for the record. But I think I did mention that we did have a previous podcast, whenever that was, last Thursday, and it was Catalina's vacation podcast. As she named it, she calls it Tripping with Kat. And we got part 1 is available, and part 2 will be coming up in the near future. It was her trip to Orlando and the parks down there. So last time we went over the Animal Kingdom and Universal Studios parks. So I think she's got Disney World and whatever, I don't know, whatever the other one is. So look forward to that in the near future. I think the most interesting thing that came out of that of our conversation on that podcast is that, that we talked about having merchandise, and that would be awesome. I'd like to get some merchandise with her uh, for sale on that. We were talking about black. I guess what I was thinking was a black T-shirt, and we get a little like white printing, or hand printed and hand drawn. I figured like a cat. It's like a black cat with a white outline, but then it's like his eyes are just like rolling, or it's like maybe like little spirals. It's like the cat is tripping. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential in a logo like that. Maybe I'll do some sketches and we can get that figured out, and we can actually sell some stuff. I mean, not I don't know how much that would cost to do, but not that we were not well, this is a big money making endeavor, but just more for fun and just have some weird t-shirts out there people like wearing. I can just picture that people wearing those and people like, what does your t-shirt mean? And just weird questions people might have. Promotional t-shirts for her podcast. So hoping to go forward with that. It's just there's so much stuff I want to do and there's so little time. Just it seemed like I'm just so scattered and busy all the time, trying to get things organized, trying to get my writing back on track, get some stuff published, get the memoir finished up. It's one thing after another. It seems like I just don't have enough hours in the day to really sit down and get everything done. Well, I'm working on it. Hopefully we'll make a dent in things sooner than later. Like I said, we got, this was chapter 33 today, 27 left. So we started in September. I can't remember if it was, let's call it early September. So we've gone September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So we're pretty much done with March, 7 months in, and we did, we're halfway through the podcast, the recordings of the memoir, Colonel and the Kid memoir. I figure if we I think we'll easily get it done this year in 2026, even if it takes 7 more months. I think we'll be rolling better. Just you just get better at it. Like I said, you practice anything if you want to get better at it. So we're not like we're practicing, we're just doing the podcast. You just get more experience behind it. So each different session kind of just layers on top of it, and you get just better at doing it. Starting it up, inserting the photos, doing the editing, doing whatever. You just get better at it. It takes less time. Not that it isn't still tedious, but it just I don't think you can not get better by just repetition. It becomes muscle memory of doing stuff. So hopefully things keep going in a positive direction. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're gonna get some stuff out there, new stuff out there, and keep moving forward. But look for cats tripping with cats podcast part 2 of that vacation summary coming up here. It'd probably be in April. I don't think it's going to be before Easter or anything like that. So mid-April. Let's call it that as a target. It was actually kind of funny because I probably wouldn't even done a podcast, but she was like kind of insistent on it last Thursday. I still wasn't really. This still was a little bit under the weather, but she was wanting to get, I guess, get going on it. I think before the memories got too old for her, because it was probably a month and a half ago when they were on their vacations. Well, it was February. It was almost 2 months ago because it was February 1st through the 7th, I think, when they got back. It's like 7 days. And here we are, not April, we're March 23rd. So time goes by. Memories fade. And that's what's weird. That's what's weird about even the memoir and stuff. I just don't even know for sure how accurate and close this this memoir is. I mean, as far as how I can recall things, and I really have a lot of self doubt about how accurate my recollection of stuff is. I just imagined it or imagined it being that way. Maybe it was similar, but it was who knows. I don't know. It's very the mind is very weird, I think, when it comes to this stuff. What you want to be true versus what is true. But anyway, one of the things that was going on while they were on vacation, and then even later when I was Esteban was going on for his work trip and I was taking care of the dog. I wanted to talk about dog sitting. So it's not a recurring segment, but just a summary of dog sitting. And there's the cliche. There's so many cliches that I've experienced during that dog sitting time. It's not like I'm totally unfamiliar with dogs. I mean, I had a dog for a while, went way back when, 30 years ago, I guess now. I had a chocolate lab named Mickey, but so I am familiar with taking care of a dog and dog sitting. I took care of Esteban's dog here, and one of the funniest things, and I'm gonna try to get these photographs up in the video podcast too. Was my favorite story was with Echo the dog. Oh, is she's like a medium sized dog, maybe small towards the smaller size. It's half husky and half pit bull, and she looks really cool. One of the coolest looking dogs you can picture. Very good size, very pleasing size, appropriate size, whatever. It's not a big dog. It's a big burly dog running into stuff, clumsy in that sense, but nice, nice size. Not a little toy miniature, whatever. It's a nice sized dog. But one of the one of the days I was walking her, we walk on the trail mostly. There's a rail trail or the Arroyo Trail where it's an official city paved trail. But then to walk over and then walk back to my house from the trail or to the trail, got to walk through the neighborhood. And on the way back from the trail one of the days, there was a motorcycle parked down the street on one of the side streets. And Echo saw that motorcycle and I just didn't recognize what it was. So she was like, just stopped and staring at it all stiff, looking at it and started barking at it. And, it was just a motorcycle parked there. There was nobody around. And so I brought her over, walked her, she was on the leash and I walked her over to the motorcycle so she could see what it was and identify it and just, you know, not be scared or whatever was causing her to bark at it. So it was so funny to me that she just naive sense caused her to bark at this motorcycle that was just parked there. So that I took a photograph of her looking at the motorcycle with her ears up and stuff. And then later on Google Photos, you can remix the photo into like the like cartoons or modern style or whatever it is, or like the claymation or the animation of like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer type animation. And so I made one of those photos of that, and all that made me laugh the way that it came out on there. So I'll post that photo into the video podcast too. So that was a good one. But back to the more cliche stuff of what dogs do when they're walking, or whenever, if you have a dog, which you see dogs rolling in stuff like anything dead, they'll try to roll in it, or just something stinky. They do that, I guess, you know, their history of being a dog, they try to cover their scent so they can, because they hunt up their food and they got to try to cover their scent so they can sneak up on their prey. So Echo, she finds something dead, she'd roll in it and be yelling at her to not do that. It's just the cliche of being a dog. But one of the things that happened, another thing, I think I got like really like five stories for the dog update. One's the motorcycle, and then rolling in dead stuff. One of the things that happened when she was in the backyard, blockaded in my backyard. The gate was blocked with a board and some bags of mulch that I had pressed up against the gate so she couldn't get out. But one day over by the gate was I have an old grill, and it's got a cover on it still. It still works, but I don't use it. I have a newer grill for grilling outside. And dog's bored, so she's she's a couple years old. She's not a puppy anymore, but she was over and I would sit out at the on the table in the living room so she could see me from the through the patio doors so she wouldn't feel like she's abandoned. And I know she's probably nervous about being at my house, a strange place, versus being back in her backyard, Evon's house where she's got a kennel and stuff. But one of the afternoons I was just sitting at my kitchen table, maybe working on my computer, reading whatever I was doing, sitting there so she could see me if she was looking in from the outside through the patio doors, but she wasn't there. And all of a sudden, I just hear this huge crash outside, and I see her come running back into view of the patio door, and she's looking back over towards the gate. And I thought, God, is someone trying to come in through the gate, into my backyard? Sneaking, trying to sneak in my backyard, but they've crashed into something and made a huge noise and scared the dog. And so I got up and went over there kind of cautiously to look out the patio door. And I had to open the door to look out and see it. And what happened is apparently Echo she was chewing on the grill cover and the grill was this kind of like some pea gravel over there. So it's kind of a little soft. There's kind of a pretty good layer of pea gravel right along that gate door and I just had that grill pushed up against there, and she must have been pulling hard enough, tearing up the bottom of the the grill cover and pull the whole grill over. And there's no tank or anything on there, so it's kind of top heavy and came over pretty easy. I'm glad she didn't get hit by it or hurt. Could have easily just smashed on top of her. Maybe it did. I don't know. But made a huge noise and scared the heck out of the dog. But it was funny to me. Funny after the fact that everything was okay, but pull the pull the whole grill over on top of yourself when you're chewing on something, you're doing something bad as a dog. She never chewed on the grill cover again, I don't think, during the whole time that I was watching her after that, but it's interesting. Yeah, but, um, one of the other things that happened was consistently when I'd walk her is she's of course, dogs sniff. That's all they do is they're sniffing around everything all the time. Then she's marking her territory. She smell other dogs' markings, pee on everything and anything and everything all the time. So she'd be sniffing constantly, but one of the things she would sniff up, she would find like food all the time, or chicken wing bones or spare ribs. I don't know. There's just all kinds of stuff that people just throw out their windows. I guess there's driving down the street if they're eating something. And especially in this area where I'd walk through consistently, there's some new construction going on, some new houses being built. So those workers over there, I guess, have their chicken wings or chicken or whatever they're eating. Um, Parts of hamburgers, whatever tacos that they didn't want to finish, they just throw them on the ground, and then I don't notice it, and so that dog's really, really sniffing. She'll stop, and I'd be just waiting for her to. I always was thinking she's just gonna mark her territory, but then she'd find some food, so she'd be like, one time most of the time I couldn't stop her in time. She would eat the food before I could get it. But one time I was looking, trying to see what she was smelling, and there was one of those pink, like, snowballs or whatever, those little Hostess can cakes or whatever they are. I could see it. She was sniffing, and she was on her way to being able to just, like, 6 inches away from being able to be on top of it and grab it, so I was able to see it and spot it before she got it and pulled her leash back. Keep her from eating some Hostess snowball or something, those pink snowballs. That was one of the things that was always happening when I'd take her for a walk. She'd be trying to find food. I don't know, maybe she's starving. That's the way of the dogs. The dogs are always I think dogs are hungry all the time because that's their nature. When they were throughout their history, they were always looking for food, looking for the next meal. It was always a challenge. So it's inherent in their DNA to try to find and sniff out food. And finally, one of the last dog story that I wanted to share while I was watching the dog is that, and this is not to be sexist or misogynistic, but it's going to sound that way, but because it's true. This is a true story that women can't control dogs. It's just unbelievable to me that and dangerous, especially bigger dogs. 100-pound dog, the strength of that dog of 100-pound dog is no joke. And these two women, I was walking one way on the trail and they were coming towards me, and I'm trying to, I can control Echo. She's probably like, I'll say 30 pounds at the top end, if that. Between 30 and 30 to 40. Maybe not even that. Maybe it's 25 to 30. These women are coming downhill and I'm going uphill, and they have these two big, each has a big dog. And I don't think they have the leashes tied around their waists, but they're just trying to hold them. They're not mean dogs. They're just big dogs. And dogs are dogs. They see another dog, they like to check out the other dogs. And these women couldn't control the dog. They were being pulled by these dogs, and the woman's like, I can't control the dog. He's just pulling me. And it's like, I'm just like, no, don't worry. I mean, I had Echo, and Echo is not a mean dog. She's excitable and wants to see the other dogs and meet them. And if she feels threatened, I think, she'll bark and growl at him. But, and Echo doesn't like to be on the leash when she meets other dogs, because I think she feels like she's cornered or restricted enough that it bothers her. So she'll get aggressive in that sense. But these women couldn't control those dogs. There's just no chance. If those dogs would have taken off running, they would just pulled the lady on the ground, and she'd have been being dragged by that dog. And it's scary in that sense that, you got to be able to control your dog. There's no two ways about it. I know that. And in my neighborhood, my neighbor was telling me that, a lady had a dog. One of the ladies in the neighborhood had a dog, and, not a big dog, maybe a 60-pound dog, maybe. It was a rescue dog she had, and she would walk it along the street. I'd see her, wave to her and talk to her once in a while. And one day, my neighbor was talking to her out on the street, just on the sidewalk, and she had her dog with her, and she was standing there holding the dog. The dog, I think, saw another dog and took off towards it, and it pulled this lady right down, and she fell and hit her head. I think she broke her wrist trying to stop her fall, but she got pulled over by her dog, 60-pound dog. And this lady's very slight. She's an older lady, probably in her 70s. And she had to go to the hospital and get stitches in her head and stuff. I wasn't here. This neighbor had told me about it, when I was, when I was gone. But it's like, I hate to say it, but women just can't control dogs. It seems like scary to me. So anyway, those are my dog stories. I'll leave it there. I know it sounds like I'm sort of just total sexist and misogynist talking about women not being able to control dogs, but it's quite evident to me in the experience that I've had that these are facts and not just generalizations. I mean, obviously if you have a little 3-pound toy poodle or whatever those, I don't know, whatever those little, there's different kinds of tiny dogs, like a Chihuahua. Sure. Yeah. But it's kind of scary to me. And you should know your limits. If you can't control the dog, don't take it out around other dogs or out in the public when you're going for a walk like that. Just make sure you're able to control things. Anyway, that's the dog wrap up. See if we have any more feature reports. We're gonna try to get into a routine of going over to Estevan's and picking up Echo and taking the dog for a walk during the week just so she gets some more exercise. She's not being cooped up all day at Stevon's, because Estevan works up at Los Alamos Labs and is gone for pretty much, I don't know, 14 hours a day when he's during the work week. So the dog needs a little, I guess, probably a little more exercise than it gets. So we're going to be trying to do that here in the near future. So look for more dog stories. Hopefully good, positive ones in the near future. I also had I'm gonna go back to a recurring segment. I don't think we've talked about this for a while. This is the abusive language, or verbal abuse, as we used to call it sometimes. And the abusive language topic for today is something that came to my mind because I was just reminiscing or trying to think of some more information to share and to fill out the chapters of the memoir. And one of the things that I was considering was, as when I was a kid at Grandma and Grandpa's one Christmas time, that I got really sick and had a high fever. And when I get a high fever, I get like delusional. And I remember being as a little kid that they had to take me to the doctor in Sisseton, and the doctor was Filipino. And I know that when you're talking about being Filipino, it starts with an F. But I know that you're Filipino, it starts with an F. But if you're from the Philippines, we spell the Philippines with a PH. And I was like, why is this? I finally Googled it and was like trying to figure it out. And it's pretty obvious, but still doesn't make sense. So this is a verbal abuse thing where we're totally abusing language, I guess, in this case. Why it's Filipino is with an F is because it was, I guess, colonialized by the Spanish. And so they named the Philippines after King Philip of Spain. But when we talk about Philip in the English language, it's Philip, Philip. But in Spanish, it's Felipe, which is Felipe. Felipe is Philip. So we spell the islands Philippines with a PH, but Filipino is the Spanish, and it's just F, Filipino. So it's just complete nonsense to me that we why don't you just pick one and just call it that, especially for us. If you're in the English, we speak English pretty much in the United States. I guess that's the dominant language. England, still English. I mean, imagine the strangeness of England not speaking English. That's whatever. So can we shouldn't it be just change it to Filipino with a PH? Could we just do that? I don't know. Maybe it's probably too late, but anyway, the point is I went to a Filipino doctor when I was a little kid. I was thinking about that, and it's always bothered me. And in fact, I was having this debate to myself too. It's like, isn't Filipino? I was thinking Filipino is spelled with an F. And I think I did look that up. I was yeah, it is. I was doubting myself because I thought, well, maybe I'm just not. Maybe I'm misremembering it. Maybe it is Filipino with a PH. Anyway, let's move on from that because it's just so strange. We just live such a strange world where the nonsensical use of language in this case. So we're just gonna leave it at that for the time being. I would I guess I'm gonna probably wrap it up here. I wanted to do a final thing. It's been a while since we've had it, and I think the last chapter that we had for the Colonel and the Kid podcast, chapter 32, I think I had a fail on the music update. and we're gonna get that in because I want to do the crazy list. These are songs featuring crazy. I'm not gonna do that today, but I think we'll try to get another chapter in this week. The podcast done this week, and then we'll. I think maybe that's my commitment to that is we're gonna do that. I have a whole write up with all the crazy songs. I'll go through the list of the crazy songs. Also include the mental health. I think the list was called the mental health list, but they feature mostly songs that have the word crazy in them someplace. So we'll go through that and then talk about that. But today's music update, just a quick thing. I guess there's been some sort of declaration that we can't have some of the classic rock songs are going to be disallowed now, like "Cold as Ice," "Waiting for Girl Like You," "Urgent." These songs are going to they're kind of banned, I guess, because they're by foreigners. By foreigner. So with all the new regulations and no, because a foreigner, the band, they're now banned. Oh, that's a long ways to go for not a very good landing joke. Is it too much to say that was a joke? Yeah, it's probably more of a you got to have an audience. During the podcast, if you have some jokes that aren't that you need more of an audience reaction to. So that's one of them that I would probably, um, if I could do it over, and I would dissuade myself from telling that joke or making that a quote joke. I'm doing air quotes now with my fingers for those people that are unable to see the video podcast. So I don't know any other foreigner songs. "Cold as Ice," "Waiting for a Girl Like You," "Urgent," "Jukebox Hero." I should have probably included that one in there. You can't play that song anymore because they're foreigners songs. And with all the illegal immigration, we sure don't want foreigner songs in this country. Maybe I just didn't work it out enough. Maybe that's a little better. Maybe a little funnier there. And this is a good example of the podcast of thought processing, working out a joke. It's just seeing how things percolate and maybe rise up to the top in this situation. Maybe I could have done a better job with that. I should have probably just waited and worked on that a little longer and not rushed it out to the music update so soon. But, what can I say? I was anxious to get that out there. Probably spoiled it. And again, going back to the idea of practicing stuff to get better at doing things. If I would have practiced that joke, it could have been one of the greatest jokes ever. No, that's probably going too far. We're not going to go that far, but it is far enough place to end the podcast for today. I think it was a pretty good one. I think we really made some inroads into the positivity of podcasting here. And again, I think that's it. I'm going to sign off. You know the rules here. I think that most of all, this podcast is sort of an inspiration. I'm trying to inspire and try to make people more, you know, more assertive, more positive, more proactive. And I my commandment, I guess, in the situation for the ending the podcast is always ending on that kind of that higher note and striving for better. So you be assertive, be positive, be proactive, and then you take action. That's the biggest thing. This is, don't be passive and sit around waiting for something to happen. Make the action happen. You take action. That's the biggest thing. I mean, in my mind, anyway, it's not the only thing, but I think it's the biggest thing of trying to have a more uplifting life is for you to be more active and take action. So I'm going to leave it there for today. Good podcast. Glad to be here. Glad to be back feeling good. And, that's what they say. It's always good to be sick for a while so that you can appreciate feeling good. And I think I'm feeling much better, and I can appreciate, feeling good as compared to being feeling really crappy for a while there. So glad to be back, and we'll try to get a couple more podcasts out, at least one more this week. Looking forward to that. So I will leave it there, and I'll leave you with this as we sign off again. We don't say goodbye. We say see you later. And of course, knock and the door will be open to you. Seek and you will find. Ask and you shall be given. That's it. Take it easy. See you next time on the Colonel and the Kid podcast. I'm Greg Heitmann. See you later.